Thank you for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV, and thank you for making us the #1 breakfast show in the country. Now, let's get into that conversation. On Tuesday evening, the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Martin Zokotho-Chola, sent out a directive to his officers and men, informing them that the president had ordered for the immediate release of suspects arrested on charges of idle and disorderly. According to the directive, no person should be arrested for this crime. Analysts believe the president is just playing politics. And if he wanted to get these prisoners freed, he would get some of these laws struck off the books. That's just their opinion. Now, joining us to discuss this issue, we have Dr. Adrian Juko, the Executive Director of Human Rights Awareness and Promotions Forum, and Mr. Frank Baine, the spokesperson of the Uganda Prison Service. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
Morning.
Morning.
First of all, Mr. Baine, do we still have prisoners in our prisons for being who are arrested for being idle and disorderly?
Well, prisons as an institution is not an arresting agency. We only receive prisoners.
Have you received any prisoners on this charge?
We don't have a single prisoner who is on idle and disorderly charges, but we have prisoners on rogue and vagabond.
And that was the president's directive to release these idle and disorderly suspects. But then, what about these other people that were held on, these petty,
If I go by the writing, first of all, I don't know whether I'm very comfortable to discuss a document which is for the operations of police, and I'm not a police officer. But
just
since it is a matter of national concern, I am telling you that according to the warrants, of the 60,000 prisoners that are in custody, we don't have a single warrant that reads the charge idle and disorderly. But we have prisoners to the tune of about 459 charged with rogue and vagabond. Maybe where is the distinction? According to the unrevised penal code, I know there could be a revised one where some laws have been repealed, but section 167 of the penal code talks of the charge of idle and disorderly. Then what distincts it from rogue and vagabond is that at section 168 says every person convicted of an offense under section 167 after having been previously convicted is as an idle and disorderly person is the one who is a rogue and what? And vagabond. And if I read the letter, it is very clear. It is talking about a person charged of idle and disorderly, not rogue and vagabond. So we have 0 prisoners on idle and disorderly, but we have 459 on rogue and vagabond.
159. So
no,
459. Dr. Adrian Juko, is the president's directive constitutionally binding?
First of all, I would like to respond to him a little bit. The question of whether they have people who are idle and disorderly in prisons. I like this number, 459 persons on rogue and vagabond charges. And again, he hasn't spoken of common nuisance. He hasn't spoken of things like frequenting a place used for smoking opium, which is also a common charge. All these are petty offenses. For me, if I interpret the president's directive quite well, though he uses the word idle and disorderly, I think really it covers all these. I know he wants more specificity, that is about rogue and vagabond, about common nuisance, but for me, I think in the spirit of the letter, idle and disorderly laws include being rogue and vagabond, being a common nuisance, frequently a place used for smoking opium. It's all part of the petty offenses punishable by 6 months imprisonment or less. And about the validity of the president's directive, I'm going to take it into 2 levels. The first one is the directive to the police, right? The police is directed to stop arresting people, certainly on the charge of being idle and disorderly. Certainly, as the president, he has the powers to direct the police as an institution under him. Just like he has the directive, he has the powers to direct any other institution under him. However, there's one institution he may not direct, 1 or 2. That's the judiciary and the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution. So he directs them to stop prosecution. They may heed, they may not heed. They're not necessarily bound, but the police is bound. Now, about prisons, he also copied the letter to the Minister of Internal Affairs. Now, if we come to think about it, this is an issue of the prerogative of mercy for prisons, because it was a clear directive that you should release persons who are in detention, arrested by KCCA enforcement, and who have failed to pay fine of 1 million and bail. It was a clear directive. And that if this happens, then If this happens, these people should not be able to repeat this. This is a conditional release under the prerogative of mercy. So in my view, actually, and there has been a case decided on this by the Supreme Court, that's the Brigadier Smith Okonacha case, which actually says that for the prerogative of mercy to apply, there must be something written by the president. No format, but if it's written by the president and says in writing that this should be done, then the prerogative of mercy applies. So I think, actually, the prisons are actually bound to release these people.
Well, maybe let's also go back and agree on each other. I have not seen the directive from His Excellency the President, but I've been seeing the one saturating the one from the Inspector General of Police.
Oh, yes.
And my understanding of it is that the Inspector General of Police was informing his team on the instructions he got from the President. And because he got this directive from the President on a direct line, he went ahead to inform his supervisors and those other people he thought were affected by this directive. But I didn't see anywhere in line where the Commissioner General of Prisons is involved. And that's why, as prisoners, we are always ready anyway to act as long as we get communication from the relevant authorities. So right now, what we are talking about, I would say on the side of prisons is speculative because government writes. And I'm sure His Excellency has all the channels of writing, either directly or through the Attorney General, actually, who is the chairperson of the prerogative of Mercy Committee to address this. Because, you see, even when you look at the details, it involves those who are not paying fine of 1 million. Yes. Does it mean those who are paying 1 million below, 1 million above, specifically? So the unfortunate part is that we are picking something from the internal administration, and then we are making it, giving it a big cover and rotate around. But like I said, yes, these laws are supposed to be repealed, but the process to repeal them is there. The principal and the friend is still talking about his interpretation and the understanding. Unfortunately, the job I do does not allow me to do interpretation and understand. It is follow the lawful orders and implement them as they are. I don't have the liberty to imagine and assume what is underlying. That is not my area.
Dr. Yes. Let's stick to the interpretation of this directive. Now, enforcing this directive seems like a long bureaucratic process.
Yes.
Why didn't the president just issue a pardon and let these people go?
I think he did. And that's the interesting thing. He actually issued a pardon. If you look at the letter, again, okay, he says he hasn't seen the letter. But if you look at the letter that the president wrote, not just to the police, because what we saw was the police Inspector General of Police responding to the letter and directing his people. But basically, the letter that the president wrote wasn't just to the Inspector General of Police. It was to many institutions, and it was directed to many people, including the entity under which they are, the prisons are, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Internal Affairs. So, of course, I agree with him that they may need a letter from the Ministry of Internal Affairs directing them to do the same. Basically, like the IGP did for the police, they may also need one from the Ministry of Internal Affairs. But basically, in all essence, the letter that the president wrote is actually a pardon to the people who are in prison. Said by KCCA, these people can be identified. It's so clear, right? KCCA, and then a fine of less than 1 million, which you fail to pay, and you are in jail for that. Because if we go to the bureaucracy, these people are not supposed to be in jail for long. It's 6 months and less, really. If we go through the government bureaucracy, then they would have served their sentence and leave. So it serves no purpose. But I think the president wanted his prerogative of mercy to be exercised.
Actually, one important thing which may share, and I want to share, is that while the president can be quoted under the prerogative of mercy, for the convicts, the question of people on trial entirely is in the hands of the DPP and court. But as the fountain of honor, he can give guidance and direction. And I think that's in his letter, which I have not seen. That's the implication. But I remember in one of the State of the Nation addresses, he said, you know, we shouldn't waste resources arresting people that hide disorderly. Yet there are many other criminals who are walking free. And it is not the first time he was saying it. But you know, the law is very interesting, that when the president says somebody is supposed to put it in writing. They're supposed to make the cabinet, from the cabinet to the parliament back, then into law. Then when it is repealed, then the communication is done and the implementation is done. That's why I'm saying that, well, actually from the time we talked about it, this thing has been going on. That's why I am telling you that while it is in the penal code,
Right.
in the laws of Uganda that we used to have idle and disorderly,
Right.
we don't have a single prisoner who is on an idle and disorderly. That should point at the fact that people have already been hiding. But then there is rogue and vagabond.
Yes.
It is connected, but it is not
Under
the same.
Preparedness laws. Now, Mr. Baine, the president also advocated for the release of the suspects held by KCCA enforcement officers.
Yes.
Do you have any in Luzira?
Definitely, one of the most active courts is the KCCA court, and people are arrested and convicted of various activities. But like I say, there must be specifics. Like on that issue of people who have failed to pay, because if I looked at the statement from the IGP, that those who have not been able to pay a fine of 1 million, is it 1 million and beyond? Is it 1 million and less? So that's where I think why the president wrote. He was writing to those who do go deep into these matters of the law, and I'm very sure in the short time, the Attorney General,
Yes.
who stands in for government to interpret the laws, he will write a precise document which we can work upon.
So are you
But
holding
fortunately,
any defaulters right now as we speak?
one of the good things about Uganda Prison Service, we are the people who have the most accurate records
Right.
that you win. And even if you gave an order at midnight, by 7 a.m. and say deadline of executing this order is by 7 a.m., you can be sure you will get 100% results. So for us, we are ready, but waiting for the right communication to our institution.
So let me get this straight. No idle and disorderly suspects, but how many do you have from KCCA?
I don't have the figures off cuff, but they
Give us a
are
rough estimate.
maybe they are in a few in about 50s or 100.
So when do we expect them to be released?
I can't release them. There is no document on my.
There's been an unofficial
no.
public.
There is no document. You see, that's what I'm trying to tell you. That
It's interesting that the
what,
president.
what I'm saying is a letter from the IGP. IGP
interesting.
is at the same level with the Commissioner General of Prison.
Yes.
Even when he was giving copies to the Minister and the Minister of State and the PS,
Yes.
he was giving their information to his supervisors. And then, because in the instructions he received, there was KCCA. That's why he gave a copy to the executive director. KCCA, did you see any correspondence to the Commissioner General of Prisons?
It's really mind-boggling that
So
the government.
we cannot work.
talk to
We
these
cannot
other
work.
agencies and not talk to the other prisons.
Now,
really
it is
mind-boggling.
the discretion of those who have the
Yes.
powers and responsibility to do the needful. For us, as law-abiding workers of this country, we are ready to serve and we are serving. But
Okay.
we have to follow lawful orders from the rightful sources.
Dr. Jiko has something to add on that.
Yeah, just on that point, the fact that the president wrote to the Minister of Internal Affairs really indicates that the president intended that the prisons also take action. However,
But they
I
didn't.
agree with him on one point that if they haven't received a direct communication that the IGP did, then that's a little bit different. But that means the Minister of Internal Affairs certainly has to write to the head of prisons
Absolutely.
and direct them to do what the president directed. But I have a feeling that the president's directives have to be implemented, for goodness sake. For this time around, it's so clear, it's in writing.
Yeah.
And so it has to be implemented. But I agree with him on that technical point. But I think by now we should be preparing. There already is really. You know it will come.
You see, one good thing, I will tell you, we have previously received the directives. For example, we got a directive to produce maize seed.
Yes.
And we are doing so.
Right.
We got a directive to produce cotton.
Yes.
Those of you who watch programs, you have seen how we are advancing in cotton. We have a program to give government institutions furniture, which we are doing. So we are one of the most obedient servants this country has. But we are also very careful that we act within the confines of the law. And I am telling you that unless, as I am here, the document is being dropped, there is nothing on the desk of the Commissioner General instructing him to this. But as far as what we are talking about is what we are reading in the media,
Mr.
both
Adrian,
social,
yes.
print, and electronic.
Mr. Adrian Duke and Mr. Baine, you must agree that there is some confusion there.
Yes.
The second directive that the president gave was the increment
Yes.
of salaries of science teachers.
Yes.
Now the permanent secretary is saying to the public services, saying we did not receive any message. The person that is supposed to actually release the money.
Right.
So I agree there could be some sort of fishy activities going on there. But then, Mr. Baine, will the prisoners be screened before they are freed? Just in case they give you the directive. Will you first
I
screen?
want to ask you a question. If you think you are going to get married, and you know when you're married you have children, do you run to the shop to buy nappies and diapers for the baby before you even marry?
I can save the money for the diapers, but I won't buy them.
So you cross the river.
So in this case, I would expect the government
For us, there's no need for us to be, first of all,
Yes.
there's nothing to push us into the panic mode. The records are clear,
Right.
the people are there, the prisons where these people are very, very known and there. And normally when we get instructions, we are given the timelines.
Yes.
And we have never failed to meet the timelines. So because of the speculation in the media, we cannot operate like that. Because you see, unfortunately, that thing it makes a lot of excitement.
Right.
Because like if you say, have you prepared? You arrange these people, and then like the remands, the court say no. For us, we have to first clear our desks by looking at these people one by one. Then what do you say? Say no. The president said they must go, so I am opening the door. Then they will charge you because the commitment warrant clearly says the officer in charge you are commanded to receive from court, and then bring this person on this date to court. So the process has to go. The due process is, I'm sure, is on whenever it is. And for us, there is no hurry. These people have been there. They are there. When we get the right instructions, they will go out in time.
I disagree with the issue of there's no hurry. One of the things I said before was that these people have a shorter sentence to serve. But also these people are in because they are really poor. If we start darting around and take our time to release them, and it's okay, I agree with the issue of there's no directive specific to us, but like he says, you've seen it, right? There's something that has been written. You may expect to receive a letter. For me, I would really think that, and usually you do it, you prepare people and send them to the prerogative of mercy, their names and details. And this time around, something has come up from the president. We are hearing this is happening. Unless the prison should take the initiative to send these names. Oh, you talked about people who have been arrested by cases. These are the names. Should we release them? Don't just wait for the directive.
Where did he talk to us?
The idea is, Mr. Baine, if you're not prepared and then you're given this
No.
directive,
I have given you the
Like,
numbers.
you might be
know
able-
why I have given you the numbers? It's because our records are clear.
Right.
The main
You see,
reservation.
you are in a panic mode if you don't have any record of what is going
Yes.
on, and you are waiting for the communication, then start scampering around for the record. But like I tell you, if you go to every station, the officer in charge knows how many people he has, on what charges, from what courts, and at what stage are their cases. That is the work of the officer in charge. And it does not take even an hour, unless there are these big prisons like Upper, to sort out those. And in which case I don't expect anybody of that case to be in a prison like Upper prison. These are people who are in lower security prisons.
So Ugandans shouldn't be worried.
And
that
you
some-
see, that's where the aspect is. For example, when you are looking at this, the other thing we need to be maybe looking at is that if they are talking of KCC and these pet offenders, what about these other urban authorities in Mbale, in Mbarara, in Arua, who are also arrested in the similar circumstances? Do they get affected, or it is only KCCA?
That's where I want you to become more proactive.
Yes.
And it's not just about doing your job, which is, I follow directives and instructions as they come. I want the prisons to be more proactive than that. It's now KCCA. Let's first get the names of the people who are convicted by the KCCA court and send them
Even
off.
those who are still on remand.
Even those who are, Now, the prosecution has been directed to stop the prosecution. That's another business altogether. But it's the convicts, who you know very well.
But you see,
Let us
like
have the
those
names
ones,
there.
those ones who are still on going, I think there are over 300 people.
Yes.
On,
300,
on those cases. But they are also part of the process that is being discussed. That's why I'm saying that we need clarified. We can't separate take statements on a sweeping line, because you get in the middle and you enter into the cases and you get stuck.
So, Mr. Baine, Uganda shouldn't be worried that some hardcore criminals might be freed through this hurried process.
You see, one of the interesting things about prisons, there is what they call segregation. When a person is entering the prison, that's where it is defined where you go. If you are a pet offender, if you are a capital offender, and the charges, that's why you see I move with the penal code, I move with the Prisons Act, I move with the Constitution. Why? Because dealing with human life is very sensitive.
Yes.
If you falter on things to do with a human being, you will pay heavy. And we are always very careful not to falter on those lines. And we have the record, which speaks for itself.
And we love that approach. But just another approach which requires you to be more proactive is what we are requesting for. No one says that Commissioner General of Prisons cannot pick the pen and write to his Excellency or the Minister. What did you mean? What should I do? Really?
Now, what you may need to know is that some of these decisions, when you see the President making information, you don't know how much information he has got before he makes a pronouncement. So, but that is now not for me to discuss here. That you see, there was a talk between the President and the Commissioner. The President always speaks from the informed point of view, and he gets information from his troops on the ground. And one of the things that we do as prisons, we do monthly returns, we do weekly returns. They are these National Security Committee discussions, So there are very many interactions that go on that involve this situation. But some of these things, when they come out as a standout, then people tend to isolate them and look like it's a tree standing in the desert. But it's a much bigger aspect. And by the way, I am appreciative of that, because you see, the state wastes more resources. Like they removed graduated tax, that the money spent to execute the law is more than the results of the law. First of all, if you say one is a $1, he has not touched anything, then you end up feeding him, taking him to hospital, taking him to court where that is transport. So you find that the person who was, he was wandering, but looking after himself. Now you take responsibility of looking after him, then causing a commotion to his people. So that's why I think from the humane point of view, the President is like, we can deal with these serious problems. Why are we attracting these small things which can be managed at the different levels in our society?
Now, Mr. Frank Baine, you must agree with me when I say that the bureaucratic process has impeded most of your activities. Because right now, yesterday I hosted Luke Owesigire, the deputy police spokesperson for the KMP, and he said that the reason they could not go to Pastor Senyonga to verify his allegations on human sacrifices in the churches was because he did not go to the police first. And then we were asking, me and Mala, that why didn't the police go to Mr. Senyonga to verify those allegations? Now, in his case, he's saying he did not get a directive, but I would expect the prisons to actually pen down.
I am saying,
a document, and maybe ask the president.
No, you have misquoted me.
Yes.
I know that we have not, we did not get the directive, but we say the communication has not reached us.
If it hasn't clarity, you would be the one to take the initiative to contact the presidency to find out indeed what is happening.
You see, he's a fountain of honor. He knows what he's doing, and he's even experienced in what he's doing.
Indeed.
So if he has initiated a program, I find it unfair to start to jump on its back and then you want to take it the other way. That's not bureaucracy. You see, bureaucracy, because you see, there must be a channel. In order to avoid conflict of interest, you are a custodian. You know the communication channel from the president, from the prime minister, from the attorney general, from the minister of internal affairs. The parameters are very clear, and that's the procedure they always follow. Why should we want to jump the procedures simply because for this only thing?
to get clarity. Anyway,
Yeah, the
Mr.
clarity
Adrian,
will
But
come.
also because there are human beings involved in this
Yes.
whole process.
Yes.
I can
The
so
clarity
say.
will come.
Mr. Adrian, let's talk about the
Yes.
timing of this directive.
Right.
Now, it's not the first time the president is coming out to pardon people arrested on idle and disorderly
That's for
charges. 2016, February 9th, he came out and he said, okay,
Yes.
please release all the suspects.
Right.
Kaihura didn't do it. 2017, reiterated the same message. 2018,
Right.
still nothing. Now, let's talk about the timing. Why is... And that was during the campaign period,
That-
2016.
yeah.
And right now we're heading into the campaigns,
campaigns, yes.
2020. So let's
Yes.
talk about the timing. Why is the president coming out now?
I think he's coming out now because the issue has become pertinent. For starters, there's a case in court which challenges these provisions of the law. We don't know when it will be heard and when it will be decided. I think that's also important. Number two, I think also the politics also matters. If you look at the numbers in prisons, it talks of 459 people in jail right now. Sorry. 459 people in jail right now for rogue and vagabond. So if we come to think of it, how many people are there for being a common nuisance? How many people are there for being recently there was a massive arrest of 200 people at what you'd call a place where they charge them with frequenting a place where opium is smoked, which is something quite strange because really, how do you prove that? But over 200 people were arrested. Many of them are still in jail right now. So the arrests have become rampant and more common every single day. And people who are arrested are young people. People are going about their own jobs and doing something. That makes the government, I think, to appear in bad light when this happens. So I think it has the political inclination, but also I think the human side. People who cases see arrests, these are vendors, these are traders, petty traders doing their jobs. These are poor people. I've never seen a rich person like Afande Baine here being arrested for being idle and disorderly. So it's the poor who are arrested. So it's an offense that's about status. And that's something that should change. I think the president also, it appeals to his human side to do that. But also for me, the issue of why his directives don't get enforced, well, maybe I would say they don't get, not that they don't get enforced. If you look at the directive to the police to stop arresting people for being idle and disorderly, it was actually enforced in 2016 because no one, when we check the records, people aren't arrested for being idle and disorderly, and this is where the problem is. Not that they're not being arrested; they are arrested. The police doesn't care after
they never did.
After idle and disorderly, is if the person says no idle and disorderly arrests, what they do, they charge you under rogue and vagabond, being a common nuisance, being frequently a place used for smoking opium. The number of arrests don't stop; they simply increase. That's why I think, like he says, maybe they need a more clear directive. The president should really be clear and go beyond simply idle and disorderly to cover all petty offences, beyond every offence which covers less than 6 months imprisonment. Yes.
So, Mr. Baine, as we wrap up, you say you haven't gotten any official information. What's your last clarion call to government as we leave?
No, as government workers, you know we cannot defy government orders. And that's why I agree that in theory, when the order was given in 2016, the police hid it. I have told you we have a nil return in prison. It is one of the offenses where we have a nil return in the prisons. What does that one tell you? If you have zero numbers on people on idle and disorderly. So what I have for the public is, fortunately, this is a good directive, and for us in prisons, we are ready. As soon as the communication reaches us from the relevant authority, the public will see us in action.
Frank Baine over there. Now, Dr. Juko, as we wrap up, do you have any reservations? Maybe do you believe this law might not be enforced?
The directive.
But it's already being enforced.
How is it being enforced?
You have seen the IGP.
Information.
You have seen the IGP. You have seen the IGP who has already enforced.
I have reservations for sure about the enforcement of the directive. And well, the difference this time around is that the president sat down and wrote a letter, a long letter, explaining what these laws should be.
Unlike in the past.
Unlike the past, where he simply makes pronouncements or at a rally or something like that. That's what makes the difference. It's a written directive which must actually be enforced. Prerogative of mercy is actually clear that if he writes something, it doesn't have really a particular format. It's such a prerogative of mercy.
So in the event that police does not enforce this, what would be your next course of action as the human rights awareness?
Then we may have to sue them this time around because that's the directive. The Fountain of Honor has directed that you should stop arresting people.
But let us be fair. Let us be fair here. By the time the IGP wrote to his team, I don't think he was fearing to be sued. He was only putting in practice the instructions he had received. And that, to me, that is wonderful. Let's look at it that nobody actually, even if people heard or knew, but they did not expect the IGP to act in such a shortest possible time. Right. He received the instructions, he has guided his team, and the team, I'm sure now it is already on the ground doing its part.
But the question he's asking is, if they don't heed to what he has said, then there's this thing of individual responsibility for individual police officers who continue doing this.
Absolutely.
You know, that's something we need to, as citizens, all of us need to come out and have this enforced. Citizens need to come out and say, no, there was a directive, you can't arrest me for being rogue and vagabond. And I say it's as extensive as, there's also just being guided disorderly. It's as extensive as being rogue and vagabond and common nuisance and all the other petty offenses. So yes, we have to do something. We have to enforce, as citizens, it's within our power to challenge such actions by police officers, by other authorities who actually do not do what they're supposed to be doing.
But also, maybe one small minute.
Just in 20 seconds.
Yeah, that the human rights principle land friend needs to go a step further and also sensitize the public. Because I was listening on the radios in the morning as I was coming, and people are crying and said, these people, they want us to have very bad Christmas. They are sending back the bag grabbers, the phone grabbers, the necklace grabbers. We are in trouble.
But then thank you for coming to debunk some of these. These are not those people. Thank you for coming. As the spokesperson of Uganda Prisons, Frank Baine, and the Executive Director of the Human Rights Awareness and Promotion Forum, Dr. Adrian Dugo. We've been bantering about the President's directive to release people arrested on the idle and disorderly charge right there. Right about now, we are going to take a very short break. We'll be right back with more exhilarating information. Keep it morning at NTV. Thank you, gentlemen.